Hello, today we're going to look a little bit further at Romans chapter 12. Now last week we began exploring this chapter when Paul said, Therefore I urge you brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. We explored last week that Paul said, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And we began exploring that concept last week, but we're going to explore it even further as we continue in Romans chapter 12. Paul continues to unpack what it looks like to be not conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now, the passage that I read earlier in the service today kind of sounds like a lot of moral do's and do nots. It kind of sounded like a list of morals and even like a very obvious set of morals, saying something like love must be sincere. Well, obviously. But what Paul is getting at in this chapter isn't just a list of morals, do's and don'ts. He has a deeper and a bigger agenda in his mind, and we begin to glimpse this agenda in the last verse of the passage today, where Paul said, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Paul wasn't just telling the Christians in Rome how to be good little Christians and how to do what they ought, but Paul had a bigger agenda. He was responding to the reality of evil in our world, and he gave a plan. He offers a program for how to confront evil in our world and how to overcome evil in our world. How do we overcome evil? With good. And that's what's going to happen in our passage today as we explore what Paul had to say. Paul's goal wasn't just to lead the Christians to live a good moral life, although he does intend to accomplish that as well. But Paul wants believers to know how to interact with the pattern of this world, not just to develop inwardly as a person, but how to actually interact with the broader world around us. How to interact with our culture to bring about good, to overcome evil with good. How do we do that? Well, for one, Paul said, love must be sincere. It needs to be real. It needs to be genuine. Hate what is evil and cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. We talked about how diverse Christians are last week and how they've been given different capacities, different abilities. They're all very different. And yet, in the midst of our diversity, we're to be devoted to one another in love. Again, the idea of love here isn't an emotional idea. Paul, when he says love one another or love must be sincere, he's not talking about the way you feel. He's talking about what you do. He's talking about actions. He said, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need, and practice hospitality. He said, and he's so much like Jesus here in the Sermon on the Mount, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Our natural default response, of course, is to curse when we've been cursed. When somebody does something wrong to us, that we curse them, that we have ill will toward them. In fact, we might even seek to manipulate circumstances so that we can exact revenge upon them. But Paul said, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, but also mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Again, what is the formula for encountering evil in our world? Well, again, by rejoicing with those who rejoice, but mourning with those who mourn, living in harmony with one another, being not conceited, but willing to associate with anyone and everyone. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Again, Paul realizes, of course, that we can't please everyone. There's a balance to what Paul is describing here. But insofar as it is possible, as it is practicable, we do want to do what is morally right in the eyes of everyone, insofar as we don't fail to obey what God's instructions are for us. He said, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Again, that is our goal, to not have unnecessary conflict, but to be at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear brothers, but leave room for God's wrath. Hey, if somebody's done something that is unjust, let God be the one to sort it out. Like we have so often in our Psalms, the psalmist prays, hey, Lord, this person has done something evil toward me. Lord, please do something about it. And the psalmist leaves room for God to answer the prayer. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. In fact, Paul says, much like Jesus said, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. How do we overcome evil? With good, by doing what is not expected. In fact, that's much of what Jesus had to say to Peter. Peter was told by Jesus, hey, look, I'm going to go and I'm going to be crucified. Peter could not, though, imagine the idea of ever overcoming evil with good. He believed that you had to overcome evil with force. It was time to go into war. It was time to defeat God's enemies. But how was Jesus going to defeat his enemies? By laying down his life. How do you defeat your enemies? How can we make real change in our world? By denying yourself. By picking up your cross. By following Jesus. How did he overcome evil? By laying down his life. And by laying down his life, he overcame evil. He defeated evil. That's how he accomplished it. He was a sacrifice to defeat evil. Hey, what sticks out in your mind today of the instructions that Paul gave? And it was quite a long list. Perhaps there's one or two commands that Paul gave that stick out in your mind. I want to encourage you to reflect on those and begin to apply them into your life immediately. As your mind is renewed, as we think about these things, our mind is renewed and we cease to follow the pattern of this world. But we become transformed into someone who looks like Jesus. God bless you and go with God.